Bryan Kohberger can't take it in prison anymore. His fellow inmates have ganged up on him, making him cry for his mommy.
I want to go home. I want my mother.
Inmates are taking turns targeting Kohberger.
So he submitted these formal requests to the Idaho State prison to be moved.
Convicted killer Bryan Kohberger is now demanding a prison transfer after allegedly receiving threats from other inmates.
But will they move him to make his stay at their facility more pleasant? And how will this persistent psychological torment decrease his life expectancy? Now, let's get started.
They got together and said, okay, well, how do we harass this guy? They're utilizing the vent system. They're kicking the doors. They're taunting him, torturing him through using psychology. The inmates apparently were waiting for him. They are now making his life absolutely miserable.
Bryan Kohberger is spending life without the possibility of parole for what he did to the Idaho 4. However, he will likely be in solitary confinement for the rest of his life for his safety because other prisoners may try to attack him if he wasn't.
This is hell on earth. It's the prison where Bryan Kohberger will spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement, locked in his cell 23 hours a day. Meals are slid through slots in the door.
The types of crimes he committed and the intense media coverage means that prison officials can never safely integrate him into the general population. So he's likely to spend his entire life in solitary confinement.
Your fellow inmates are anxiously awaiting your arrival.
Transfers like the one Bryan Kohberger requested are rarely granted. Prisons follow strict protocols to maintain order, and moving one inmate can disrupt housing, strain staff, and create security risks. Unless there's a specific documented physical danger, these types of requests are usually denied. Let's think about the operational logic here. What happens if prisons start granting transfers every time an inmate feels discomfort? Right, it would create chaos, undermine their authority, and set a precedent that inmates could use to manipulate the system. Also, for high-profile inmates like Kohberger, that risk is even higher. His notoriety for what he did to those poor kids and their families will follow him, so moving him would not make him less of a target.
They are taking turns and shouting through the air ducts to keep Bryan Kohberger from being able to sleep.
Because if he were to ever be moved, others in that block will surely do the same thing to him. Also, moving Bryan to a less restrictive unit could make that area of the prison more unstable, as other inmates will also see him as a high-valued target where the same things will happen to him again, creating new security and behavioral problems that will negatively impact those less dangerous offenders. Moving him probably won't change anything. Over time, the constant flood of stress hormones doesn't just disrupt his thinking, but it also begins to damage the neural pathways that allow for self-control and any rational decision making. This type of psychological strain doesn't just stay in their mind. Chronic stress like this is toxic to the entire body. Elevated stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline affect almost every bodily system. The cardiovascular system suffers as stress raises blood pressure, damages blood vessels, and increases the risk of heart disease and stroke. Bryan's immune system will weaken, leaving him more vulnerable to infections and slower to recover from illness he may contract or injury. You may be wondering how he can possibly be injured. This could be in situations where maybe the guards forgot that Bubba was still in the showers when they bring Bryan Kohberger in to shower.
If you drop your soap while in the shower, let it go. Knock you out and take your butt. And that's happened too. Getting knocked out and getting their butt taken.
His metabolic health may also be impacted, increasing the risk of diabetes and other chronic illnesses. At the cellular level, chronic stress accelerates biological aging by shortening telomeres.
What are telomeres?
Those are the protective caps on chromosomes.
Like the end of a shoelace. With each cell replication, the telomeres get shorter and shorter until they're so short that your cells can no longer divide. When cells no longer divide, tissues age.
This cumulative damage year after year is known as allostatic load.
That's a measurement of how stress impacts each of us. Experts say that 80% of all sickness may be related to chronic stress.
And explains why long-term inmates often develop serious health conditions years earlier than expected. What do you think happens to someone's mental and physical health over years and decades of this stress? Yes, it shortens their lifespan and even reduces their quality of life. And that's even if the person never faces physical violence behind bars. However, as you know, very odd things seem to occur in prisons when cameras conveniently stop working.
And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. There are multiple 3 fractures in the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, more consistent with homicide. Extremely unlikely. I've never had 2 guards fall asleep at the same time. All the video doesn't work.
I'm telling you, he himself.
And I think that there are active conversations about how long they wait until they just murder him in prison. Like how much they can make him suffer.
What? Where's he going? Grab his ankles.
Now, the neurological effects of prison stress are equally profound and often permanent. In the brain, hippocampal shrinkage will reduce his memory capacity and his ability to learn. In prison, there's natural prefrontal cortex suppression, which results in impairment to his impulse control and decision-making. Amygdala hyperactivation heightens fear and aggression responses. From a neuropsychological standpoint, this means an inmate under chronic stress, such as Bryan Kohberger, is more likely to misinterpret threats, resulting in lashing out impulsively or withdraw completely. Over time, these changes create a cycle where Bryan's brain adapts to a high stressful environment, making it harder to function even in safer or less stressful situations. This is one reason why inmates who serve long sentences often struggle to adjust to normal society when they are finally released from prison.
Institutionalized. But I'm telling you, these walls are funny. First you hate them, and you get used to them. Enough time passes, you get so you depend on them.
All I do anymore is think of ways to break my parole. All I want is to be back where things make sense.
Their brains have been conditioned to operate in a hypervigilant state. However, Bryan isn't going anywhere. He will die in prison. When inmates feel powerless, such as Kohberger here, it often shows in their behavior by filing repeated grievances. Showing irritability or acting out becomes a way to regain a sense of control, even if it doesn't change anything. Prison staff in turn often view these behaviors as manipulation to gain a sense of control in their life, which of course makes the prison staff less responsive to those grievances. This creates what's sometimes called the grievance cycle, where the inmate feels unheard, therefore they file repeated complaints, and staff dismiss those behaviors as attempts to game the system. The inmate, like Kohberger here, then feels even more powerless, reinforcing the stress response. For high-profile inmates like Kohberger, this cycle is intensified by the constant scrutiny and the fact that his notoriety ensures he will always be a target by inmates no matter where he's prisoned. So he will likely always be in solitary confinement for the rest of his life.
He's in a cell 23 hours a day and is taken in shackles to exercise inside a cage for 1 hour each day.
Even in solitary confinement, Kohberger may be permitted to buy a computer tablet for $100.
He can watch whatever he wants in his cell at any time.
The U.S. prison model is focused on containment, deterrence, and punishment. The expectation is that stress and discomfort are part of the punishment experience, because prison is intended to be punishment. That philosophy and focus of the U.S. prison system is why requests like Kohberger's are almost always denied. The punishment is the suck. It's supposed to suck. It's punishment. It's prison. Over years or decades, the biological and neurological impact of stress compounds. Damage to the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex doesn't just impair thinking, it limits emotional regulation and decision making. Elevated cortisol levels continue to break down bodily tissues, increase inflammation, and drastically accelerates aging. In just about 20 years in prison, when Kohberger is in his late 40s, he may show signs of accelerated aging. This may include conditions like hypertension, painful arthritis, cognitive decline, and other chronic illnesses that typically don't occur until much later in someone's life. High stress environments effectively reduce life expectancy. Therefore, if Bubba doesn't get to him beforehand, his life expectancy could only be in his mid-60s. But health-wise, he would be feeling like he's in his mid-80s. From an operational perspective, the prison's decision to deny Kohberger's transfer request is logical. Moving him wouldn't remove his notoriety or the attention from other inmates. It would simply shift the problem to a different unit, negatively impacting those lesser offenders. Maintaining consistency, avoiding unnecessary disruptions, and keeping high-profile inmates in controlled environments are standard practices. This approach ensures that prisons don't set a precedent where inmates get to choose their exact housing. This all demonstrates a broader truth about incarceration. Prisons in the US are for containment and punishment. They're not to protect someone's mental health. The system prioritizes order, and any well-being that results from that is mostly incidental. His physical and neurological deterioration will follow. His lifespan will shorten because of the combined effects of stress and the environment. Did Bryan Kohberger really think that life in prison, especially a lifetime in near solitary confinement, would be anything other than relentless for what he did? Did he really think he was going to be dealt an easy hand here for what he did? The US prison system is built on control and punishment. They don't typically make exceptions to better cater to someone's comfort, especially someone like Bryan Kohberger. Over time, that kind of environment wears down the mind and body in ways that are impossible to escape. Bryan Kohberger has also filed complaints claiming he's been the target of sexual harassment from other inmates.
Apparently been making multiple complaints to prison guards, including that other inmates are threatening to sexually assault him, and now he is pleading for a transfer to another wing of the prison, according to a handwritten, quote, resident concern form,
creating what he describes as a hostile and unsafe environment. But in the context of prison, especially for high-profile offenders, harassment like this is common and almost impossible to eliminate.
I know a couple of big old bull that just love to make your acquaintance, especially that big white mushy ears.
Also, he's in solitary confinement. He's in no physical danger. They haven't let Bubba in his cell yet.
Does my ass look big to you? No. Liar, I'm a cow.
The prison had reviewed his complaints and determined that his housing unit was still considered stable, meaning there was no operational reason to move him. To the facility, this kind of verbal harassment doesn't rise to the level of requiring a transfer because also, given his notoriety for the sick things he did, those types of taunts will likely follow him no matter where he's placed. Bryan Kohberger even filed grievances about not getting all the items listed on his food tray. He claims that meals often arrive with missing components and that staff refuse to replace what's missing. Makes you wonder, right? How much do you think Bryan Kohberger has been eating in prison so far? Missing food may seem minor, but for inmates with no control over their environment, small issues often become a big deal. It's one of the few things they can complain about and try to control, so it sometimes turns into a point of focus for them. On top of that, he's accused staff of ignoring his concerns and failing to follow protocols, framing his situation as neglect. However, as you can imagine, his complaints were dismissed without action. For Kohberger, it's just another reminder that he has no control over his environment, and that lack of control paired with a system that doesn't prioritize his comfort is exactly what prison is designed to reinforce. Bryan Kohberger's request for transfer and his other grievances have been denied, and they will likely continue to be denied. The US prison system values consistency and control, and his notoriety ensures he will remain a management challenge wherever he is housed. The psychological and physiological effects of his environment will continue to take their toll on his brain and body, aging him much faster than if he were on the outside, grinding him down year after year until his mind dulls, his body breaks, and the constant torment of his isolation strips away whatever resilience he has left, leaving him trapped in a cage in a slow and unavoidable spiral of mental and physical decay. Now in the comments, if you could transfer Bryan Kohberger anywhere you chose, where would you choose to send Bryan Kohberger? Let everyone know in the comments below. Subscribe for more. It's kind of amazing that Bryan Kohberger actually has the nerve to ask for better conditions for what he did to so many people. And for Bryan Kohberger to say, yeah, I didn't get a muffin today. I mean, what a piece of shit. May not want to eat that muffin. Oh! I forgot your muffin. Do you think Bryan ever thought about that? That maybe his food is secretly contaminated? But maybe if he winds up watching this video, he'll have a new little fear unlocked. I think we all hope so. See you next time.